Hello, hello. Welcome to another session of Tabnine Office Hours. We took a little bit of a break last week, which is the first time I think maybe in 7 or so months of kicking this series off. The folks who haven't been here before, my name is Christopher Good, Chris Good. We're casual here. We're all friends. And this is Tab 9 Office Hours. It's an interactive session where you're going to see sort of a presentation and then followed by a live demo, and we'll have a live QA going the entire time. So it's just me, but I will do my best to monitor chat as well as keep us on pace for what we're scheduled to learn about and talk about today. So without further ado, let me just back up really quick. We had a great time at NDC Oslo. And if any of you folks who are on this call, or any of you folks who are there that are on this call, it's great to see you again. And yeah, let's kick things off. So without further ado, let's start with some metrics to level set ourselves, right? Looking specifically here at the state of adoption and talking more so about the Stack Overflow, right? There's this independent survey from Stack Overflow that's showing widespread AI adoption among developers, and that's no surprise, right? The 2024 Stack Overflow developer survey showed around 76% of developers are using or planning on using AI coding tools. And that's up from 70% the year before. And a strong 72% of developers hold a favorable or very favorable attitude towards these tools, right? So developers clearly recognize the benefits. 81% cite increasing productivity as the top benefit of AI dev tools, followed by a speed of learning at 62%, and then a improving of efficiency in 58%. So in other words, a vast majority of these developers see AI assistance as a key to getting more done in less time. Now, excuse me, that's not really surprising, right? We understand that AI is fundamentally changing software development, and the productivity gains for using an AI code assistant for engineering teams have been incredible, right? And that's regardless of what tool you're using, whether it's an AI code assistant or a black box LLM. These solutions have real value and are helping engineering teams deliver faster, right? And specifically at Tab 9, the increase that we've seen our customers come to expect ranges from around 30 to 50% increase in productivity gains across the full set of tasks that constitute the SDLC. Now, let me move. Okay, so now Gartner is also reporting by 2028, 60% of enterprise IT operations will be supported by AI agents, and that's up from less than 5% at 2024, or I should say 2028. Excuse me. So AI right now is currently at a turning point, right? And that's also necessarily no surprise, but it's important to understand what that turning point is. So let's be clear here. Shipping more code faster isn't the same as building better software, right? We'll say that one more time. Shipping more code faster isn't the same as building better software. And we're seeing a wave of tools pushing developers into what we call vibe coding. And that's, where AI generates, developers accept, and little thought is given to how code fits into the system, right? The architecture or the company's long-term goals. Excuse me. Clearly have a little frog in my throat this morning. So let's anchor this in what the data shows, right? And GitClear's 2024 to 2025 analysis across 153 million lines of code changes found that as teams leaned harder and harder on these AI tools, the sort of the vibe coding tools, that code churn nearly doubled, right? So more code was being generated, but more was being rewritten and discarded, right? Why? Because AI without context or discipline, right, produces fast but fragile outcomes. And at Tab9, we believe the future isn't about automation of replacing the developer. It's about the amplification, right? Without undermining their autonomy, where AI elevates human creativity, right? Aligned to your engineering craft. And the future belongs to teams who embrace this craft coding mentality, right? A model where AI is tightly integrated into engineering workflows. It's aligned to your standards, and it's governed by human expertise, right? So this isn't about eliminating developers. It's about elevating them, right? And the only way to make sure that AI delivers uh, not just speed but sustainable success is in doing amplification, right? So let's talk about what is vibe coding, right? Now vibe coding itself, well, I should say, let's back up here. Forrester warns, and Get Clear warn that at least one major company will attempt to replace 50% of its developers with AI and fail. And why? Because vibe coding ignores the non-coding work that developers do, right? Designing, debugging, ensuring compliance, making architectural decisions, right? When you skip the human layer, you're not streamlining, you're setting yourself up for disaster, right? And Tab9's alternative to that is craft coding, right? We call our approach craft coding, and the research backs it up. And Atlassian's 2025 Hula framework, right, the human in the loop LLM agents, showed that human guided AI accelerates routine work but requires human review for quality and correctness. So craft coding isn't about slowing down. It's about accelerating without losing control, right? This is still light years above where we were 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, right? But it's about doing it in a manageable, sustainable way, right? And again, accelerating without losing control. Now, excuse me. Let's keep moving, and we'll talk about the benefits, right, of human in the loop AI coding, right? Because fast seems awesome, right? We all want to move faster, but again, without doing it with reason and strategy, we're just creating more chaos, right? So human oversight boosts results. And we're not just making this up. The top 20 or research of 2025 overwhelmingly confirms that AI is most effective when humans stay in the loop, right? So Atlassian's work on agentic systems, McKinsey's developer satisfaction data, fintech and healthcare rollouts, they're all pointing to one thing. AI can take over the boring, repeatable work, but you cannot let it run without human judgment, right? When you do, you risk bad suggestions slipping through, breaking compliance, or worse, losing the creative edge that makes your developers valuable in the first place. And McKinsey found something even more interesting. When developers work alongside AI, they're twice as likely to report job satisfaction and enter this flow state. Why? Because they get to focus on meaningful, creative challenges, not grunt work, right? And Tab9's platform is designed from the ground up to make your team stay in control. Every AI suggestion is context aware, right? It's standards aligned, and it's governed by human experience. And we're going to show exactly what I mean by that, right? So that's going to happen here shortly within the demo. And by the way, all of the research that I am talking about, everything that we're going to be going over today or have previously went over so far, All of this is available if you just shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and I can send you a little sort of research packet that has all of my research for this talk. And now, continuing to move forward here, Tab 9's real world on impact and productivity and quality, right? And the developer experience. What are we actually seeing, the tangible results? I say this slide matters most for most engineering leaders in regulated industries, right? Trust, performance, and proof. Tab9 just isn't another code assistant, right? We're an enterprise-grade AI-driven platform, purpose-built for organizations where compliance, security, and control are non-negotiable. Now, I say platform, not AI code assistant, because we've graduated from that, right? I'd say AI code assistants just focus on code generation, right? Where now Tab9 has agents for every step of the SDLC, all the tasks that constitute the SDLC, the full SDLC, from code generation and onboarding into projects, all the way through code validation and coaching, right? So we care about the entire flow. Now let's start with the numbers here. Our customers are seeing a 73% automation factor, which means nearly 3/4 of their repetitive or routine coding tasks are now fully handled by AI. And that's real measurable efficiency being unlocked. Now with Tesco software, a global enterprise, we help drive around 32% increase in developer productivity. And that's tied directly to their ability to ship features faster without compromising quality. And they also reported an 84% lift in code quality compared to generic LLMs. And we know that code quality is where technical debt either starts or stops. And most impressively, we've helped teams double their test coverage, right? Which is a critical factor for engineering confidence and compliance and speed. And then on the right-hand side here, you're going to see a handful of other enterprises that are trusting Tab9. Excuse me. And these aren't startups experimenting with AI, clearly, right? These are engineering organizations that are very mature and complex and advanced, right? Like GE Healthcare, AstraZeneca, Huck Coburn, right? They're operating in industries where the margin for error is zero, right? And Tab9 earns their trust because we deliver AI that is context aware, controllable, and built to integrate into the full complexity of the enterprise SDLC. And these teams aren't just gambling on AI, right? They're scaling with it confidently. So the developer gains we often hear are will AI replace developers? But the data says the opposite, right? When AI is deployed to support developers, teams experience higher satisfaction. They experience better engagement, and they experience stronger retention. And that's because we're not reducing people to button pushers. We're elevating them to architects and innovators. And I think that's a very important distinction to make there when you're implementing a tool like Tab9. But let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about the dangers of vibe coding, right? Now, this is where the hype really breaks down. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to throw them in the chat here, but not all at once. Not all at once. Now this is where the hype really breaks down, right? One of the largest code base analysis we have from GitClear, right, shows that AI tools like since AI tools like Copilot or in Codium or Windsurf arrived, right, code churn has doubled, right? That means teams are adding code really fast, but then ripping it back out when they realize it doesn't fit, right? It breaks things and duplicates existing logic. And in head-to-head tests, some of the buzziest tools, right, the Windsurfs, the Cursors, even the Replets of the world often fail to deliver working applications in a complex enterprise environment and often spiral into these unproductive loops. And if you've never experienced an unproductive loop, I don't want to say, go out there and test one out, because I want everyone to use Tab9, because you won't never get into one of those loops, right? But if you've never experienced one, God bless, I have, and let me tell you, it is incredibly frustrating. Um, when you don't know what when you don't know what these tools have built, right? Unlike Tab9 where you're in the loop, when it comes to problem solving, right, and you get stuck in one of these loops, you're left in the dark, right? And worse still, the governance risks are massive, right? AI can hallucinate APIs, can pull in insecure libraries, and a good example of this, I think, was a study from last year, I believe. We talked about it last week, where GitHub was pulling in, I think it's like 43% of the code that Copilot was generating contained a significant percentage of the top CWEs, right? So as you're generating code, you're generating insecure code and vulnerabilities, right? Or it can even sneak in license restricted code. And without human review, you're just laying a minefield in your own code base. And that's why Tab9 builds human in the loop rigor right into the product, right? We know that without control, you're setting yourself up for costly rewrites later. And as someone who came from sort of the cybersecurity governance space, let me tell you that while it seems like a small lift to go back in and rewrite something, the amount of time, right? Your salary, someone else's salary. The costs add up, right? When you're doing even just small remediation work. Now, head-to-head tools or tests show head-to-head tool tests, I guess is a good way of putting it, show that more code does not equal better code, right? Windsurf, Cursor, Replit, and these controlled benchmarks, these tools either produced broken apps or failed altogether. And Copilot claims more productivity, but even in their own data, that shows that 13% more lines of code doesn't guarantee fewer errors, right? So we need to prioritize quality and integration over raw generation. Now, excuse me, let's talk about how leading teams are winning, right, with craft coding. The most successful organizations today are rejecting the all-in automation push, right? Instead, they're embracing the structured frameworks that make AI explainable, governable, and aligned to their unique environments. Whether it's Atlassian's Hula system or another emerging framework, the trend is clear. Human control, context integration, and incremental trust are what deliver real sustainable value. And Tab9's platform is ahead of the curve, right? Our enterprise context engine makes sure that every AI suggestion understands your architecture, your policies, your patterns, right? We don't just generate random code. We generate aligned, governed, high quality code that makes your developers faster without sacrificing trust. And Tab9 stands apart because we've built governance and context into the product from the start, right? Our enterprise context engine ensures that the AI understands your unique environment, right? Your approved patterns, your security constraints. This is AI you can trust, not just AI you can prompt, right? Craft coding delivers, accelerated development cycles, a higher code quality and maintainability, and stronger developer confidence and engagement, right? Organizations that strike this balance will outcompete those that chasing speed at any cost, right? So in the long run here, the winners won't be teams that chase pure speed, right? They're going to be the ones who find the right balance fast, right? Yes, fast but safe and maintainable and human centered. And that's the future that we're helping our customers build, right? Now, when we talk about shaping the future together, um, I think it's worth mentioning right now what we're not at Tab9. We believe we're not entering an industrial revolution, as you've might have seen floating around the internet. Not obviously from us, but clearly from other folks in the space, right? Where developers are being replaced. That's as you can Imagine here, I think that's a silly thought, as we all do here at Tab9, but a renaissance, right, where human creativity flourishes, right, alongside powerful AI tools. And we believe that the next chapter of software development isn't about fewer people, it's about better people equipped with smarter tools, right? That AI doesn't replace creativity, it unlocks it. So the best teams won't be the ones chasing maximum automation. They're going to be the ones who combined speed and quality, who put governance in place, who respect their developers' roles as creative architects, because that's what craft coding is all about, right? And that's what Tab9 is here to help you achieve. At Tab9, we're here to partner with you, not sell hype, but to deliver disciplined, trustworthy AI that amplifies your team and strengthens your concerns. And together we can build a software or a future of software development that's fast, secured, and crafted to last. Now, let me see here. Heiko, yeah, that's a fun one. I would never trust AI at the moment. AI is not a person I can trust. Agreed. But you can trust at least Tab9, right? And I'll show you why. And I'll try to you know, if you want to play devil's advocate, this is a fun one we went through a lot this past week in NDC Oslo, right? It's the idea that everything that Tab9's doing is done with you in the driver's seat, with complete transparency. That's something we believe heavily here, right? Because these are exactly, you have to understand the code that AI creates, not trust it. And that's something that we do here at Tab9 is we provide this comprehensive overview, and we provide the reasoning and the logic and the why as to every action that we're doing and every suggestion that AI is suggesting within Tab9. And we'll get into exactly how we do that here just in a little bit more time, but great questions. Keep them coming. So Tab9 allows developers to produce noticeably more deliverables without extra effort. And this is achieved by context-aware suggestions, right? From auto-completing boilerplate code and routine code to letting engineers focus on the unique logic of their application, right? By integrating deeply into IDEs and supporting 600 plus different languages and frameworks and libraries, Tab9 meets your developers where they work, right? Where they're comfortable, saving time across a wide range of tasks, right? And this corresponds to higher velocity and throughput, a direct boost to the accelerate metrics, shorter development cycles without requiring additional headcount. And I'm referencing the accelerate from the DORA metrics, if folks here are familiar, right? There's two that I really believe in. I think that we here at Tab9, and a lot of folks should believe in, and that's DORA and space, right? The vanity metrics of lines of code and things like that. That doesn't mean anything. I encourage you folks to think about how many times in your career that your boss has ever said, "How many lines of code have you produced?" 1,000,000. Great job. That doesn't happen, right? So we like to focus and help folks here at Tab9 show value to the ones that really matter, right? Those DORA and space metrics. So let's take a breakdown, or let's break down what we're looking at here, because there's a lot on this slide. But I think this slide captures what makes Tab9 unique, or uniquely enterprise grade in the realm of AI software development. So at the center of this platform architecture is Tab9's context engine, and that's sort of the brain behind everything we do. And unlike black box models that make guesses based on outdated or generic data, Tab9's context engine ensures that every AI action, whether it's generating code, reviewing it, or validating it, is grounded in your real world context. So here's how it works, right? First, we have multi-layered context ingestion, right? We're not looking just at the code in your open file. We're drawing from your entire workspace, your Git repositories, and Git repositories, any Git-based repo, right? So GitLab, Bitbucket, Perforce, GitHub, of course, right? Project documentation, Jira issues, terminal outputs, even knowledge base articles and architecture diagrams, right? And then we look at semantic, and we have semantic and vector memory with a knowledge graph RAG stacked on top, right? And these three types of memory work together to ensure precision, right? We extract relevant entities like functions, APIs, dependencies, and then we create this live, ever evolving knowledge graph of your system, right? And this lets us reason about what exists and how it works together. And then we have this context prioritization and assembly. And this is really what separates us from generic tools. We don't throw everything in the LLM and just hope that it sorts itself out. Excuse me. Instead, our engine dynamically assembles a precise, enriched content package that aligns to the task at hand. Whether it's code suggestion, a test plan, or documentation, so on and so forth. So why does this matter? Right? Because in an enterprise environment, your code changes daily, right? And your architecture is layered and interconnected. And your security and compliance and performance standards are non-negotiable. So Tabnine's context engine ensures that AI respects all of those boundaries. So you get speed without sacrificing control. And at the bottom, you're going to see where it all comes together, right? These are Tabnine's AI agents, purpose-built, right, for generating, testing, documenting, reviewing, fixing, and soon to be editing, which is very, very exciting, and I'll talk about what that means, are all powered by this rich real-time context. So every output is policy-aligned, architecture-aware, and grounded in the system or the systems your team actually works in. I see there's a handful of questions here, so let me go to the chat. Let's see here. AI creates code, but it's up to you to interpret them. So I consider mandatory to know the language you're working with. Agreed. Now, an interesting point here, Bruno. There was a study that we referenced earlier this year quite a bit, and I can find it and track it down for you. But to a lot of people's disbelief, right? There was a study where they gave an AI code assistant to a bunch of junior developers who didn't know a language, and they took it away about a month later. And what they saw was all these developers actually got better, right? They were better engineers after having experienced the AI code assistant, right? Because it helped teach them and learn the patterns and learn how that language works and onboard into projects, where those languages are being used, right? Asking questions about what code does what, and ultimately learned at a lightning fast speed. So when they took away that tool, they were exponentially better than where they were prior, right? So it's sort of disproving or dispelling this idea of when that AI tools out the box are just going to make your developers dumb or not be able to help junior devs, right? Vibe coding, yes, but when you have something that's a human in the loop where it's giving you comprehensive, it's a pair programmer, right? That's comprehensive. I think that's a completely different story, right? And let's see here. Bruno, yes, I can absolutely share that paper. I just saw that comment. You bet. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn so I don't forget. So I'm curious to see how Tabnine influenced your guide developers from vibe coding to craft coding. Absolutely, Ganesh. We will get to a demo of that here shortly. Just a few more slides, I promise. The best code is that had not to be written because you had thought it through. Best code is that had not to be written because you had thought. Okay, Heiko, struggling to understand what that one exactly means, but I think I might agree with you here. If you want to rewrite that and send that back through, I'd happy to acknowledge that. But let's keep moving forward. All right, so this is how we sort of increase the quality of AI code recommendations through personalization, right? We keep talking about context and the local context engine, right? Or the context engine in general, right? And now we have 4 levels of context or personalization here at tab 9. Starting on the way, I should say left, we have local context awareness, right? Then we have connection to your code base and knowledge bases. Then we have coaching based on your standards. And then we ultimately have the customization of the underlying models as needed, right? And I say as needed because I really don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes to model fine tuning. And I'll talk about here, why I think that is. Now, starting at our first level of context awareness or personalization, local code base awareness, right? And this is all the data points that we look at, and some. There's about 15 of them. So we have current file, open files, current selection. Right? We have imported libraries, compiler syntax errors, terminal and other project files, project metadata, conversation history, connected repositories, and other sources of information. Now, I will say, to your point, Heiko, we do have quite a few customers, and there are case studies that I can show you, but you can also find, if you're really curious, on our website, one of which being OpenLM, that one of the things they do is they drop their junior devs with tab 9 with the sink or swim mentality. And not to be harsh, but because they believe so heavily in tab 9's ability to be such an intuitive tool and provide such a good experience out the box. And to their, I shouldn't say to their surprise, right? But what they found is no one's sank, right? Everyone started swimming and swimming really fast at, exponentially faster than they did before, right? And that's because they're able to use tab 9 to onboard and plan and have their junior developers be much more independent. And I'll show you exactly what I mean about being more independent and how that's even possible, right? Because I know that it can seem like such a crazy idea if you're unfamiliar with how tab 9 operates. But we're going to get to that in the demo. And I promise that all of these sort of fears or worries that you have about tab 9 will most likely be eliminated. I can't say with 100% accuracy because you're not in front of me, but we're going to do our best here. Now, the second piece of personalization is connection, right? Connection to your code and knowledge bases. So tab 9 can connect to your other software development tools, right? Including code repositories or systems like Jira, right? So that will allow AI to leverage your existing work to deliver better recommendations without sacrificing privacy. And again, I said any Git-based repository, right? So Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, Perforce, any Git-based repo, Jira as well. Now, the third piece here is going to be coaching, right? You can add, when you get into coaching, you can get explicit guidance or to control, you can give specific guidance to control how tab 9 behaves, right? And that operates in the pull request as well as the IDE. So tab 9 is going to generate code that complies with all of your standards and help you enforce and validate that the code that you are generating at the pull request stage is of your company's standards and policies and patterns and guidelines. So what tab 9 enables you to do is, or enables customers to do, is to codify their institutional knowledge. For example, accepted standards for software development, or unique best practices, or corporate policies, right, into rules that can be applied at code review, right, or at the pull request or in the IDE. And you provide the parameters you'd like to see your code comply with via plain language, and tab 9 converts them into a set of comprehensive rules. And tab 9 will then check that code in the PR and IDE against that set of rules and flag any deviations and offer guidance and suggested edits to fix those issues, right? So this enables you as an organization to generate code and produce higher quality production code that is more secure and follows your practices at scale, right? Which is really powerful and something that when it comes to junior developers and sort of letting them run free, Heiko, this is a way to sort of have guardrails on those folks. Have guardrails on every developer, right? Because even your senior ones can go off the deep end a little bit here and there. Now, the last piece we're going to talk about is of course fine tuning. It is possible, and you can do it. It's the ultimate sort of, I don't want to say the ultimate level of personalization, but I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, right? Unless you're working with something that's like Spark, Verilog, Ada, COBOL, right? It's not worth the squeeze. And I say that why? Because the second your code changes, that fine-tuned model ideally becomes obsolete. So what we've really found is a lot of customers see better results when they have a real-time RAG system that's accurate and contextually aware in place. For example, like our enterprise context engine. So moving forward, let's talk more about coaching and why that's important, right? Because any AI code assistant, even a generic one, and any LLM can generate code, right? But really only Tabnine can validate that code to the level of sophistication that is needed for enterprises to not push more tech debt into their production environment. Now, this was I should have known that I still included this report here, and I'll send that over to you, Bruno, because this is clearly here in this in this presentation. And this is important because code generation generated by generic assistants is questionable in its security. This is why coaching is so important, right? And that could devalue AI at your org. So this study looked at GitHub projects and Copilot generated code. It also examined ChatGPT or GPT and Codium and Windsurf. And they found that on average, 30% of code snippets generated by these tools had security weaknesses. And, the security weaknesses were diverse, and they related to 43 different CWEs. And 8 of those CWEs were found belonging to the currently recognized like top 20, 25 CWE list, right? And that's a problem because you can't generate or you can't scale code generation if you're scaling security weaknesses and technical errors and bugs. And that's going to outside high level thinking, that's going to tank metrics when it comes and scores when it comes to having to do remediation and rework. And it's going to tank value. Now, again, this is that code review, right? And there's this should be a GIF, but we'll show you the live demo here shortly. The GIF doesn't seem to be working. There's 2 ways to train the code review agent, right? And I agree, Heiko, it is about human interactions. And that's one of the things we believe here in code review is that it shouldn't just be done on, in an automated fashion, but it should be done still with a human in the loop. But we do agree that humans can't remember all of these rules. It's impossible for a code reviewer to remember 100 different rules for 5 different languages that their team is writing code in, right? So there's 2 ways that we allow you to train this code review agent. You can import your rules via natural language in the admin UI for that rule set, and there's sort of a way that we can help you develop it as well, right? Which is pointing Tabnine to an existing repo. We call it a golden repository, and that's going to extract a rule set from that repo, and will allow you to sort of have a really good starting point that you can go in and customize and fine tune each of those rules, right? Of course, you can also upload a CSV sheet with a bunch of plain English descriptions, and then we can, Tabnine will sort of create good and bad examples from that. Again, you can go in and polish, right? But what that does is allow you to augment your best developers, your best engineers, your best code reviewers' knowledge, and you make it on demand for every developer in their organization who's using Tabnine, right? So within their IDE, long before they push that code, right, or submit a PR, they're going to have a code review. That's based on how your best code reviewers review, right? And it's still going to go to that reviewer and have a human review. But this is a way to just reduce that bottleneck and reduce the garbage that's historically been getting delivered to those folks. Now, you also have to think about future-proofing AI, right? Your software development platform. And we give you complete control over your AI infrastructure to do that. And this is really, 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 really important. I can't stress it enough because many of our customers might be deploying their own LLMs. They're working in very privacy or security conscious areas, right? And we've seen the rise with Llama and Quen and DeepSeek. The LLM's arms race is far from over. And you're going to want flexibility. You're not going to want to have downtime having to work on integrations or switching gears for a new model. Now, one of the things that make Tabnine very unique, right, is that we have deep expertise in leveraging and optimizing large language models for development tasks, right? And we make a variety of LLMs available to our customers out the box. We're also LLM we're LLM agnostic, right? LLM and SLM agnostic. You can plug and play any model of your choice into Tabnine, which is huge, right? And that gives you two real key benefits. One, you can trust that you will always have access to the latest and greatest models, right? In addition to the deployment of these LLMs across a massive array of developers and use cases, we also can provide guidance on which LLMs are performing best for which use cases, right? At this point in time, I would say that, your llamas, while awesome, maybe last month, they've dropped off when it comes to competing models like Quen and Gemma, for example. And we have that expertise and knowledge to help you make the right choice at your organization. And you also have full control, not just over the models, but how you connect to them, right? You already have a private endpoint with the leading model provider. That's great. We support that. You're deploying your own open source model on a platform like Bedrock. Also great. We support that. And you want to run, let's say, Llama or Gemma in Tabnine in your air-gapped environment. We also support that, right? You're always in control of your AI infrastructure at Tabnine, and that's something that I cannot stress enough is very unique to the space. So total privacy, total flexibility, and total control is in play here. And you can deploy Tabnine however you like. Deploy us via SaaS. You can deploy us VPC. And very unique to Tabnine, we are the only player in the space now that you can deploy us on-prem and fully air-gapped, right? So something that's worth calling out, Codium Windsurf, right? As of late, they've put their on-prem or air-gapped customers mode, or sort of customers and deployment model on maintenance mode, right? Meaning that they're not going to support these folks anymore, especially after this year. And if you don't believe me, you can go read the blog post about it. But we're also going to be launching a blog post here in the next day or so talking about that coverage. And if you are in one of those privacy or security conscious areas, right, and you need air gapped, for better or for worse, Tabnine is the only option. And we're also quite a good option too. I think the best one. Now, if you are a Codium or Windsurf customer and you're currently in that position, right, reach out to our sales team. We are actively willing to help out folks and support you on that migration, especially if you still have time left in your contract. And when you reach out to our sales folks, we'll talk to you exactly what we mean by that. Of course, I'm being a little bit vague right now, but we don't want to leave you folks high and dry, right? So again, very, very unique to Tabnine is that ability to have full customization and control over your deployment models and flexibility there. You can also deploy you can have each team or different teams with different deployment styles under one Tabnine hood. So they're also, again, leading back to that flexibility and complete control over the architectural freedom. Now, as we like to say here, any agent can write code. Ours earn your developers' trust and provide real-world value. So we all know what the LLMs, what the issue is with LLMs, right? And generic code assistants and generic agentic AI software development as a whole. And the real issue is that they lack context. They give you generic answers and they generate more code, more tech debt. And using any of them today requires you to trade off between privacy and protection and performance. And we don't believe that you need to make that decision. With Tabnine, we eliminate the need to trade off between privacy and performance and protection, right? With Tabnine, you can get it all. And the way we deliver on that is using powerful LLMs, layering on our advanced context engine for personalization, and then combining all of that with AI agents that are fully human in the loop, giving you complete control over all of their behavior and actions, keeping your engineers in the pilot seat and continuously delivering value to your organization. Because these are not co-pilots, right? They are your agents. You should be able to control them. So why Tabnine, right? Now that we have a good understanding of what's happening in the category, the way Tabnine's capabilities are sort of putting you and your team in the best possible position to leverage these innovations for days and for years to come. Let's cap this all off, and then we'll get into the demo here. We built Tabnine for mission critical engineering. It's very important. That means we're not just suggesting code. It means being deeply accountable in your organizations and to your developers, and tightly aligned to your organization's standards and protective of your most sensitive IP. We're controlled, right? We're accountable to your developers. With Tabnine, your engineers stay in control. Right? Our platform provides full visibility into every suggestion. It's backed by references and explanations and validation against your standards. Nothing ships without human approval. Because this isn't black box AI. This is transparent, explainable AI that your engineers trust and adopt. The second piece here is we're grounded, right? We're onboarded into your organization. Tabnine doesn't just understand programming. It understands your code base, your architecture, your guardrails, right? It runs inside your environment, right? This isn't a fork of VS Code. This is an IDE plugin that you can grab off the marketplace. And it adapts to your coding practices, and it follows your policies in real-time context with real-time context and enforcement. Excuse me. This is AI trained to think like your team, not a generic model guessing from the outside, right? Now, the last piece here is that it's secured. It protects your sensitive IP. And most importantly, Tabnine protects what matters most, your code and your data. Our solution runs fully within your perimeter, right? Whether it's on-prem, air-gapped, or in a private VPC, there's no external calls. There's no third-party inference, just total control over your intellectual property and zero exposure to shadow AI risk, right? Excuse me. And this is what Tabnine, this is what enterprise-grade AI looks like. With Tabnine, we eliminate the need to trade off between privacy, performance, and protection. Again, these are not your co-pilots, they're your agents, and they're built for engineering teams who trust, where trust and value is not optional, it's mission critical. And it's not just us tooting our horn, right? We will have to update this later here this year as these new reports rolled out. But again, we are a leader in OMDIA this year. We're a leader last year in Everest Group, and when it comes to Gartner, we were number one in 3 out of the top 5 or the 5 use cases out of all major providers in the space, excuse me. And we ranked a very, very close second for 2 out of the 5 use cases. Now, I assume this is going to change this year and for the better, right? Because we've only strengthened our position. Now, on to the part that I think most of you folks came here for. That's the live demo. So give me a second here to get this set up and switch some screens around. Okay, so let's put this guy up here. Sweet. All right. So I'm going to have my StreamYard screen, seemingly, I think, in a different, whoops, let me push this back over here. Okay. Just gotta move some things around. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Let's get rolling. So we are in VS Code. But again, we support any IDE, all the major IDEs, whether it's Visual Studio, VS Code, Eclipse, NeoVim, the entire JetBrains family. You'll sort of see me jump between a handful of those today. But we're going to start with going over, interacting with Tabnine, the UI that you folks are going to be interacting with, and sort of each of the agents along the way. So in this case, VS Code is where we're in today. You'll find us here on the left-hand side when you do have us installed. Now, opening this up is going to populate or open Tabnine AI Chat. Now, starting here at the top, you're going to see sort of two pillars, chat and test. Now, below chat, you're going to see our switchable models drop down. This is where you can select which models are or have been provisioned to you by your administrator. In this case, I'm going to be using 3.7 Sonnet. And I saw there was a question here earlier about Claude 4 Sonnet. We are working on adding that in. Just give us a little bit more time. But we saw the release. We were just testing it to make sure that it did work well. Some of these models, when they do get released, they are really, really exciting, and it's really easy to buy into the hype cycle. But we make sure that when it's a model that we provide to everyone out of the box, we do rigorous testing on, right? To make sure that we're not delivering something that's just, again, following the hype. We want to make sure that we're actually providing valuable LLMs out of the box to our customers. But of course, you can always add it in yourself or any model of that choice in Tab9. Now, here with below the switchable models, you're going to have an area where you can type in questions, queries, prompts, get answers, suggestions back. This is something that I'm sure that probably all of us are familiar with. Now, unique to Tab9, and what you'll find right below that is our context scope. Now, this allows developers to, on a query by query basis, determine what is their scope for that query, right? Really, really allowing them to get more granular and have complete control over the interaction. So you can determine current file, workspace, code base. We can even have Tab9 look at the terminal, or even look at specific remote repositories, folders, and files within those folders, within those repositories. Now, below that, you have the ability to use @mentions, right? So you can reference specific code snippets, right? Your methods, classes, functions. You can even reference entire files, and we'll show you what that looks like. Now, to the right of that is where you'll find all of your agents. Specifically, only the top 5 here are what comes standard in Tab9, right? That's our explain, our test agent, our document code, fix code agent, and code explore agent. And we'll show what all of those do here shortly. Now, you can also create custom commands, which allow you to take the heavy lifting out of prompt engineering that you find yourself doing on a day-to-day basis. And some of these are a little silly. Some of them are actually quite useful. But that's allowed for the developer. They can choose which ones they want to create. And they can also share those custom commands through their SCM tool. Excuse me. So moving forward, you have the ability to add images as context too in Tab9, right? So 2 ways of thinking about that, or multiple ways, but I'll give you 2 examples. One, you can turn, let's say, ER diagrams into Postgres schema. Just by showing that screenshot or of the diagram, Tab9 can implement a schema that works and follows the patterns within your code base. You can also, for example, go bug hunting. So let's say someone on your marketing team says, hey, this feature on the UI is broken. I need someone to fix this. They can submit a bug ticket, and using that screenshot, you can take it, upload it into Tab9, and use that as context to very quickly find where that exact code block is, right? Where that code in question that is ultimately broken is. Drastically cutting down time on that it would take to locate that feature without something like that. Now, to the right of that, we have our Jira agent, right? And this is where you're able to implement and validate Jira tickets. And we'll show exactly how you do that here shortly. Now, moving over from chat into test, this is where you can use our test agent to generate comprehensive test plans. Again, we'll get into that here shortly. Now, within the actual files themselves, or before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about settings. This is something that we've seen a few questions, I think, come in through chat And I see another one here on custom behavior from Oleg, and I'll talk about exactly what that means. I'm glad you asked. So at the top, this is where you can control your Jira integration. It's just a simple, SSO login. Takes about 30 seconds and allows the individual developer, once their team has been provisioned by their administrator to allow that connection, they actually can go in and enable that connection themselves. Now, below that, you can determine response length, right? So for your junior devs, Heiko, ones that you're worried about getting up and running, this is a great option to have turned on. Concise might be better for your architects, your more senior folks who just want straight to the point answers. Comprehensive is going to provide more of a learning experience. Now, custom behaviors. One of my favorite areas of the product. Oleg, I'm glad you asked about it early on because I love to talk about it. I think this is an area that fundamentally changes how Tabnine operates, and an area that I think some folks have been or might be privy to if you've experienced with other tools, right? I know that ChatGPT, Claude sort of have this high level instruction that you can provide to them, right? This is actually bringing it into your IDE where you write code, which is fascinating. And you can get really, really, really specific and advanced here. So for example, I have it following TDD. So you'll notice at any time it's generating code, it's going to generate tests for that code for me. We're going to add logging statements when appropriate, follow dry and solid principles, yada, yada, yada. You can also localize Tabnine through custom behaviors. So you can say respond in Marathi, or respond in Chinese, or respond in German, right? Tabnine supports English and non-English characters as well. So very, very powerful section of the settings, which historically for some products isn't that sexy, right? And often overlooked, but should not be overlooked here. This is where you can also create custom commands. So things that you find yourself prompt engineering on a daily basis. For example, sometimes I want to create a ticket based on something that Tabnine suggests, right? And I know that creating tickets, while it can't do it for you, right, it can create a lot of that copy to create a really good ticket, and it's aware of your code base, so it's going to give you proper acceptance criteria. This is something that can help with teams who are having devs that struggle to write good tickets. It can also create, let's say, a README file from an open project, right? So summarize this project and suggest a copy for a README file. It'll create that markdown file for me, and then I can approve it and then add it into my application. I can also then share that so other folks have the ability to create or update the README file. Things like that. Now, moving forward, let's jump actually into the project here. There's going to be some table stakes things that we do, right? That we've started off doing. It's where Tabnine originated, right? And that's code completions or code generations. So as you type, of course, Tabnine is going to recognize your intent and provide a helpful suggestion. In this case, it's going to say, uh-oh, you're going to create rule number 17. God bless anyone who has to follow all 17 of these rules, but Tabnine recognizes this is what I'm trying to do, and it's going to create another one for me because it also sees that it's closing it out anyways here. So the expectation is I want to add one more rule, and it's going to generate one that I don't currently have. Same goes for documentation, test generation, what have you as you're operating in Tabnine. It's smart, it's aware, and it's being providing those helpful suggestions. Now, I do see one question here. All of those features being tested are available, and which of the plans available? All of these features that you're seeing here today are available for our enterprise customers. We do have two tiers. We have a developer tier, and we have an enterprise tier. Dev tier is awesome for a single developer who just wants basic use of Tabnine. But if you are a serious engineering team, we have the enterprise tier for you, and that is a $39 a month tier. There is no usage-based pricing. It is just for the seat. Also unique in the space. You don't have to worry about tokens or anything like that. Now, moving forward here, let's delete this guy. You'll notice at the top of each block of code, you're going to see the Tabnine code lens. Edit, test, fix, explain, and document code. Right? This is a quick action way to reference some of these same agents that you found in the dropdown just within your code, so you never really have to leave the file. Now, let's say you want to take it a step further and you never want to take your hands off the keyboard. You can do a Command I on a Mac, and that's going to allow your devs to get access to this dropdown, right, where they can enter in instructions, natural language. They can use quick commands, right, some of those agents, your fix, document, explain, and explore, as well as determine their scope and determine the model that they want to use for that specific query. So let us start this process, right? We're going to go through a usual phase for a software developer, going through each phase of the SDLC, starting with plan or onboarding. As a dev, it's incredibly important to gain an understanding of the project, what the application does, etc. I just got out of a meeting. I was told I have to work on this, and surprise, it's a legacy code base, but I haven't worked on it in like a month or two. So let's find out what it does, right? And we can use one of Tabnine's agents called the Code Explorer. So what we'll do is we'll go down to this drop down and we'll do Code Explorer. And what this is going to do is going to run a high-level summary of this. It's a built-in quick action, right, that we can invoke from when we're starting a blank conversation. And it's going to return this high-level summary of the project's key elements, how to get started, runnable scripts, right? And you'll notice that Tabnine doesn't just provide code suggestions, but it also provides terminal commands, right? And then it's also going to provide a handful of follow-up questions, so we can dive a little bit deeper into what this application does and get onboarded just a little bit quicker, right? Okay, we know it's a fraud detection dashboard. Here's the features and functionality that's currently included here. What are we saying? It's in, okay. It's using Next.js and React. Awesome. Now I have a good understanding of what it is. And now let's say we want to dive a little bit deeper into a specific area. We can do something like our explain, right? And that's going to highlight just specific blocks of code and provide more insight, but at a much granular level. Let's see here, or God bless it should. Leave it for the demos for me to break something here. All right, let me just do a little reload here, and let's use explain code, and we'll highlight this area. Whoops. So what it's going to do is it's going to explain that selected code. So I like to say this is really, really good for getting granular after you've onboarded to understand more about specific sections or blocks of code within your project. I see some questions coming in here. Tim, yes, it is possible to get a test license. Just reach out to someone on our sales team and we would be happy to set you up with the POC. You will not have a problem talking to a human here as you will at some other places. We are always excited and happy to have humans selling human software and getting folks up and running. Oleg, I would be happy to share my custom behavior instructions. This is something I'm very, very proud of and worked on with another employee here. Got some inspiration. So we'll take that as a compliment. And yeah, we'll definitely send them over to you. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn after this session, and I'll send them right over. So yes, Ivan, the dev plan does include some of these features, but there's some that we're going to be getting to, which you're not going to be able to access on the dev plan, unfortunately. But a great reason to upgrade into the enterprise plan. So let's keep on moving forward here. We have a good understanding of what this does, and specifically this component, right? Now I think we have a good enough understanding to start moving forward, right? We understand what this is. It's a fraud detection dashboard, and we understand how it's built, and we understand all the places around it. Now, or all the components inside of it. Now, what we talked about earlier was this idea of a Jira agent, right? And that's something also very unique to Tabnine is we're the only AI code assistant that if you're a Jira shop, we can take your Jira tickets and we can turn them into production code. Now, how that works is, for example, within Tabnine, this is our Jira board. That's a sort of a demo here. Our demo board, you can see I have 16 tickets, and there's 62 or 61 tickets in our to-do, and 16 just for me. And clearly, you can see I'm not making much progress here. So please don't tell my boss. Now, if I go into Tab9, what's interesting or worth mentioning is we're only going to see 2 tickets here. Why is that? Tab9's only going to show the 2 tickets or the last tickets. I should say it's only going to show the tickets that have been active within the last 30 days and that have been assigned to me as a developer, right? So what we can do is let's see here what these are. We don't even have to we can ask Tab9. We'll do change purple and blue or orange and green. Let's see. We'll do a new conversation and we'll select one of these tickets. We'll do purple and blue. We'll say implement this ticket. Now you could also, without having to leave Tab9, you can just ask Tab9, explain the ticket to me. And it'll tell you exactly about that ticket and what's going on there, right? So first, let's, as you can see here, Tab9 is suggesting that we write a test first, following my custom behavior to a T, which is exactly what I want, right? It's going to follow that TDD, which always cracks me up. Not because I'm surprised it works, just because I hate following TDD, but it's a good example. Now it's gonna not exported, so let's make our test fail. Let's export the rest for it. Now let's verify the color team. Okay. Awesome. So let's add this code in here. We'll click apply. Now the cool thing about apply within Tab9 is that it's going to insert that code exactly where it should be, regardless of cursor location. Let's make sure that the color scheme, we'll add the tests as well here. Let's add a test to verify the color scheme as well. Awesome. Sweet. Now it's also, let's just check the references. So we can see all the areas that it's referencing within this suggestion, where it's using as context. But you can also see here that it's using remote repositories as context for these suggestions, right? I have 2 similar repos. One that's like a more built out fraud detection dashboard called Fraud Guard. Silly naming, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for a demo, not to judge my naming proficiency. The next piece here is another demo on microservices, or microservices, as I call them here. Now, it's recognizing that there's similar patterns in both of those external repos, and it's using them as context to help generate code that is, again, aligned with my organization's policies and best practices, which is awesome, right? And that's due to me having this code base awareness turned on as context. It's taking my entire organization's global repositories as context and help producing high quality code that matches my standards, principles, and guidelines. Very powerful. Now, the second piece here is we can just run this command again. I want to say we did, all right, V4. We'll say validate this ticket. Now, what Tabnine is going to do is it's going to validate the ticket based on the acceptance criteria and looking at the implementation that I've just done. And it's going to review, and it's going to give me an analysis. Sweet. There's a couple. All these ratios exceed the WCAG minimum, right? And there's one thing that it hasn't done. We need to do, some browser testing. So it's important because it's not just saying, hey, great, you've done it, move on to the next one. There's actual human testing that was described within that ticket as part of the acceptance criteria. And it's saying, whoa, I can't do that for you. You need to actually go out there and do that testing. And it's instructing me as a developer to go do that. That's pretty smart. And it's good, right? Because it's not just blindly pushing garbage in or garbage out. Now, let's keep moving forward. And I think one thing that I want to bring up, because I think this will be a good time to do it, is talking about our provenance and attribution capabilities. So let's jump over here into IntelliJ. And let me, okay. Let me see here. Show me how to initialize an open telemetry tracer provider. Use Go as the sample. So on the topic of generating code, right? And let's say you have an idea of what you want to generate, right? But we don't have tickets for. You want to use some prompting. One of the guardrails that we have in Tabnine, if I can get this to, there we go. Whatever. Just making it smaller for us here. Well, oh yeah, there we go. So one of the things we can do here in Tabnine, or what we provide, one of the features when it comes to security and privacy, is this idea of provenance and attribution, right? Tabnine is going to look at all of the suggested code that's being generated, and it's going to compare it against any publicly visible code, in this case on GitHub. And if there are any issues or any matches, right? I shouldn't say any issues, any matches in the suggested code, it's going to provide attribution for that. Now, attribution, if it's non-permissive, will be highlighted in orange. And if it is permissive, it's going to be highlighted in gray. But what it does is, and we're working on fixing the UI a little bit to make it a little bit better. So you're just going to see, let's say, Apache 2.0, and you'll see all the libraries associated with it. But what it does is it highlights all of the different libraries of source code that these that we're pulling this code from, or that's getting a suggestion. It's using as context for the suggestion, and it's going to show the license that's attached to that suggestion. Now, you can take it a step further. As an administrator, we can offer censorship, and you can say, I want to block, in this case, all non-permissive code, right? All non-permissive licenses that are in these suggestions, or, like AGPL 3.0s, for example. That level of guardrails, right, is really helpful because as we know that the percentage of enterprise organizations, big and small, are using a lot of open source software. And coming back to my days in the cybersecurity space, one of the products I worked on or focused on, excuse me, was on compliance, right, and licensing. And the horror stories that I saw from bringing in uh, non-permissive licensed code, and I'd hear about folks having to rework, or at best case they're getting, or worst case they're getting sued, right, for improper use, is nowhere that I want to see anyone here on this call end up. It is not a fun place to be. So having these guardrails is incredibly important for helping that quality of code stay consistent and follow your organization's policies on compliance, right, and licensing. Now, the next piece we're going to go through here is testing. So let's jump back over into a lot of apps here. This guy here, this is our password generator. So we're gonna generate a test plan. Or you know what? I got ahead of myself. Let's generate some documentation really fast. So one of the things you can do with Tabnine is you can use our agents to generate documentations for your code. Maybe we were in the right one here. Let's jump over. For example, something as simple as this. You can click document. Tabnine is going to generate documentation at the top of your block. It's going to understand the style of documentation you're writing in this case, Java docs. I can approve it. I can hit OK, right? You can also generate documentation using our agent document code, and you can do it for entire files, right? So I can say document code at main.java. I'll select the entire code block. It doesn't have proper Java docs comp, right? So awesome. It's going to start there with that because it understands that everything else is already properly documented. But in the case of a bigger file that doesn't have documentation already there, you can run that entire documentation agent on the full file, which is pretty powerful. So doing it from the code lens, doing it from the chat agent, you can even do it from the quick commands. Whoops. Drop down by accessing document code here as well. So it's just sort of that freedom and flexibility to generate documentation, or in this case, generate documentation as you, the individual developer, sees fit. Now, moving on to testing, which I think is exponentially more exciting. This is our testing agent, right? We can use it to generate comprehensive test plans. You can start from scratch, right? And Tabnine will pull in the proper imports, right, for that testing. In this case, it would pull in JUnit, which is what I'm using here in this Java app. However, what we found is a lot of folks already have some sort of testing established, right? A lot of the mature, complex enterprises that we support, they already have some form of testing done, right? And that's the power of a context engine, a really powerful enterprise-grade context engine, is that it can look at those pre-existing tests and patterns that you already have established, and it will generate new tests outside of that scope, right? Allowing you folks to get to full code coverage or full test coverage exponentially faster with a fraction of the headache that it's historically caused you, while still keeping it personal, right? And you in the driver's seat. You can actually create the code and test it yourself without ever having to outsource it or send it to a different team. So let's talk about how you do that. So we'll hit generate test plan for code. It's going to prompt us to select the code that we want. Now we already have a test plan here that we're going to use, but it's based on this generator.java file. So we're going to highlight this code again. I'll hit continue. And I do already have a test file. If I didn't, it would create a new one for me, but we do. So we'll hit this and we'll select it from the top. Sweet. Let's go there. Now, when we hit continue, it's going to be generate. It's going to start generating this test plan for me. A lot of red here. Don't worry about that. It's something I will worry about fixing later on. Now, what's important to understand is that you'll see here at the bottom, Tabnine's taken this entire testing file and all the tests that go along with it and used it as context, right? And then it's generated a handful of new tests outside of that current scope. All I have to do is click on the test that I like here. It will generate that test for me. I can review the code after the generation, and then I can choose to apply that code within my test file, or I can polish it and fine tune it, right? Okay, looks okay. We'll click apply, and it's going to insert that code in the bottom of my file here, exactly where it should be in this test file. It's just taking its sweet old time, probably because I have 4 of these darn windows up and running. We'll let it run its course. Leave it for me on a demo to have it run a little bit slower than usual, but that's okay. Oh, there we go. Awesome. And it'll generate documentation, because that's what I've been doing here for all of my tests, to explain exactly what's happening here. So it's also saving me that rework of having to go in and say, okay, now write documentation so anyone who's looking at this knows how this testing file works. It is doing 2 things at once, and it's really, really smart, right? It's doing it in a way that my team writes their documentation. And how do I know this? Because I've explicitly outlined, where somewhere in this file I have a markdown that talks exactly how I should be writing documentation. And it always references that, right? And now has an understanding of my patterns and guidelines and just does it out of the box. So moving forward, we've generated code, we've created tests for it, we've documented code. The last piece here we'll talk about is maintaining before we get into, we'll talk about maintaining and modernizing. And then we'll get into code review. So bear with me a little bit longer here. I'm also still monitoring chat, so if you have any questions or anything you want to see or have me slow down on, just mention it. So looking at modernization, for example, that's a common theme we heard over and over and over again this past weekend in NDC, in Oslo, right? And the idea is that I am a developer. I have a legacy code base that I'm working on, and I'm tasked with modernizing it into something new. And for a lot of folks, might be unfamiliar with that new language, right? So we're going to use that use case in that scenario here today. So what we'll do is, first, I understand that from my meeting with my boss, there's another team who's starting work on this modernization, and they've already kicked that off. And they have a repository that's their repository is already integrated into Tabnine, right? Because they're using it. And they're using Tabnine to help write that code. So what I can do is I can go in and I can say, explain. Let's do cars telemetry. So what it's going to do is it's going to look at this external repo, right? That's not in my current workspace. This is a Java password CLI application. Now it's looking at this external repo that another team of mine is working on. And it's giving me the information. In this case, I'm simply asking it to explain. But if I was curious how to implement the same testing, or how to implement a telemetry controller, it would provide that insight. It would provide that information and that guidance on how to implement it. And just to prove a point that it's not hallucinating, let's check the references. You can see here that it's referencing all of these different remote repos within that cars telemetry repository, or those files. And simply clicking on it is going to take us I'll show you here, right over to that repo. So I can see, okay, here's the exact code in question that's being used as the context for that suggestion. And that's for any of these. Oh, I think we jumped to the wrong one here. Right, it's super easy. It's going to take you right exactly to that block of code and allow you to review that and understand exactly where that context is coming from. All of which comes back to the idea here at Tabnine that we really believe in full transparency. Nothing is done in a black box or generating suggestions without you being aware and in the driver's seat. Now, let's jump back in here, and let's say that, okay, we understand the car's telemetry app. Let's use another example. Let's say that we're going to do, okay, I know that that's where they've started their work. Now I know that they're also using something called Bubble Tea. That's one of the packages or libraries that they're working with. I can ask again, Tabnine. So let's review Bubble Tea. Whoops, I actually have my context scope missed the line there. We'll do boom, boom, explain hashtag Bubble Tea. Now this is a Go library, different than Java, right? But I know this is what I'm supposed to be migrating into, right? I'm supposed to be using this new language in my build, this language in my build. Okay, here's the core concepts. Here's the example structure from what I shared in that package, and here's all the key features and how to get started. Awesome. Okay, so the next step is, all right, I want to start modernizing, and Tabnine can really be a great source of help there to quickly modernize legacy code while still following your team's guidelines and patterns. So we can say with this on, modernize at main.java generator.java alphabet.java, the core components of my password generator application. I want to modernize these components, these files, and I want to use this external repo as guidance, right? It's going to update first starting with main, and then it will go through the password and generator and alphabet, right? Moving through each of the files that I've sort of specified, and just to prove a point, it does actually work and generate code that works here. If I do go run main.go, this is that same CLI, right? In this case, I just converted it all using Tabnine, modernized it into this Bubble Tea Go library, or using Bubble Tea and Go, and now I have sort of a much more, I think, nicer looking password generator, right? But it's just proving a point that you can do that, right? You can take code, you can modernize it using Tabnine, and it's going to help you do that, right? And you can use external resources like external remote repositories as guidance and context to help modernize. Of course, just to answer your question here, the Dasa Hub, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I probably did not, and I apologize for doing so. But this will be recorded. All of these sessions are recorded, every one for the last 7 or 8 months. You can find them on our YouTube channel, Tabnine AI. So don't worry if you have to drop. This is something that's always going to be there. Now you can see it's going through sort of each stage here, adding the main piece. I won't make all of us walk through or sit through this entire process, but it is actually generating real good production code that's in my standards, and that works, right? And you can clearly see that because this is the old application and this is our swanky new bubble tea password generator. Now, the last piece I want to talk about today, excuse me, is coaching. Now, moving back over here, let's jump into our admin panel. So this is our coaching rules engine. Now, the coaching rules engine powers our code review agent. The coaching rules engine will come standard with a few thousand rules, but we encourage everyone to, make their own rule set, right? And you can do that 2 ways: by pointing Tabnine to an external repo, your golden repository, we say, where you have your best code being written, your best practices being followed. It's well documented, well tested. Tabnine can extract and analyze and extract a rule set from that. The second way is to just import your own custom rules from a CSV sheet. And that's what I've done here. And these are sort of the ones that I follow. Now, obviously, you want to have a lot more. You can have a lot more. You can have thousands, right? And we encourage folks to do that, right? Because what that happens is when you have this unique rule set, you have codified all of your institutional knowledge, like best practices and acceptance criteria for software development. It's you've augmented your best engineers and developers' knowledge, and you've made it on demand for every engineer that's using Tabnine via the code review agent. Now, how does that work? What do I mean by that, by being on demand? Well, within our IDE, what I can do here is I can say Tabnine review repository. And what it's going to do is send all of these files that have been changed since my last commit out for code review. And it's going to compare and validate and then offer suggestions if there are any rules broken, right? It's going to compare this code against the rules we see here, or against your rules engine, the unique practices that your organization follows. Now, within the terminal here, within the IDE, I can say Tabnine review report -- last. Now, what that's going to do is generate a report of everything that is wrong or against violating the rules that I have outlined at my organization. And this is all within the IDE, right? Never having left as a developer, and also not having pushed anything to my code reviewer. So nothing's been sent out to production code yet. We can take it a step further, and I can turn on terminal as context, and I can ask Tabnine, based on what we see in the code review via the terminal, help me fix the issues. And we can see here, obviously, yeah, it's looking at the scanner, right? And that's what you're going to see at the top. The main concerns are related to the resource management with the scanner object. Perfect. And here's how we can update that code. And just for good measure, here's the attribution that this is bringing in, just so you're aware, right? So it's a really smart way to help not push more crap to your code reviewers, and ultimately not allow them to be the bottleneck, because that's something that we found out And the whole reason we created the code review agent is that our devs who are using Tabnine were just so productive, but the code that they were pushing sometimes, their code reviewers would just be overwhelmed. So not only does this help sort of manage that influx, but it also helps ensure that while they were overwhelmed, that they're not going to miss anything, right? That all of the code being sent out to production is up to standards and quality. So let's continue just with a little bit more talk on code review and sort of the differences here between this and a linter. So just looking at a sample PR here, because we do have an integration with PR Actions, with GitHub Actions, excuse me. This is what a sample PR looks like, right? So as a code reviewer, this is what I'm going to see. I can say, okay, this is the code in question. Here's the rule that was violated. It's critical. Okay, I'm going to pay attention here. Here's what I need to do. And I can commit that suggestion and even have a conversation back and forth with Josh. So me as the code reviewer, I can understand what went wrong, and I can help Josh, whether it's I want to handle it completely and just commit that suggestion and acknowledge it and leave a comment, or I can have a learning experience with Josh and make code review what it should be. It's educational, right? And enjoyable. And I can send Josh, okay, this is your comment, go off and fix it and send it when it's done. Now, just a couple of points here. I should say we also have a little PR report at the bottom. So when you have a really lofty PR, this is really helpful. Now, when we are in code review, right, or the difference between code review and a linter, right? Because I think that there's some confusion here. Maybe not here, but here being the general market. A linting tool is relatively fixed, right? It checks against code review or it checks against predefined rules in code review and patterns. And it's primarily focused on syntax and basic logic issues. So think of it as like a strict grammar checker that follows a very rigid rule book. And in contrast, Tab9's code review agent is more like an experienced senior engineer, a pair programmer who understands your team's specific context and preferences. And I'd say the big key differentiators are, one is the context-aware analysis, right? Code review agent understands your entire code base, your team's patterns, your organization's unique standards. And it can identify code that doesn't align with how your team specifically writes software, even if the code is technically correct. And the example I always use here is if I looked at the 85 of you that I can see here on call right now, and I said, how do we implement a tracer provider, for example, in this application? We'd probably get 85 different answers. And while it's awesome and it's reinforcing the fact that there's a million different ways to go about doing things in software engineering, and that's really cool, the hard part is that the only one that's going to make it into production, the only one that's technically correct, is the way that you, the individual developer at your organization, writes a tracer provider, right? So that's the kind of granularity and sophistication you can get with the code review agent, is that while it might be correct code, it's not correct on how your organization does it, which is an area that usually falls short with your standard linting tools, right? The linting tools only check against a universal rule or pattern with no understanding of your team's specific approaches or preferences. The next piece would be customization depth, right? The code review agent can be coached through plain language, through instructions about your team's preferences and standards. You can explain complex architectural principles and business logic into rules that you want it to enforce. Where again, primarily linting primarily offers configuration through rules and regex patterns, right? With limited ability to understand high-level concepts. And the code review agent will get smarter about your code base over time through its connection to your repositories and documentation, right? It's going to be able to recognize patterns specific to your project, where linting remains static unless it's manually updated, right? And then the feedback quality, right? So we look at code review agent is providing a detailed explanation of the issues, and it suggests improvements and can even, in this case, help you generate code. If I could figure out IntelliJ's ability to drag and drop here, help you figure out code suggestions as well. And linting offers usually a brief predefined error message and a basic fix suggestion says, there you go figure it out on yourself, right? And then the last piece I would say that's a huge separation when it comes to code review and linting is that the code review agent can actually evaluate architectural decisions, implementation approaches, security implementations, performance and considerations, maintainability, readability, right? Very sophisticated areas, I would say. Areas where there's a lot of, gray area, as we talked about earlier in this conversation. You might code it one way, I might code it another way. They're both correct, but the way that's really going to make it into production, the way that's corrected or is the way that we do it at your organization. So think of it this way: is that linting is like a spell check, and Tabnine's code review agent is more like having that senior engineer who's well trained on your code base inside and out, reviewing your code. Your most experienced code reviewer or engineering leader. Now, I think we've already covered a lot of them earlier, right? But Jira integration, your response length, concise or comprehensive. You can define your own custom behaviors as well as create your own custom commands. Settings section is often overlooked, but there's a lot of juicy stuff in there, and I encourage folks to play around with it. When it comes to custom commands, for example, I joke around that it is your imagination's the only ceiling, right? Anything that you can dream of, pretty much, you can create a custom command for it. Just to get the juices flowing here, we have a customer who I cannot share who they are, but I can tell you that they are semiconductor manufacturers. Now, what these folks have to do is rigorous testing. They have a new piece of hardware. They have to put it through a handful of tests, handful being a few hundred. So what they do is they have a testing template, the handful of, a few hundred tests that they have to run every piece of hardware through. So they have a custom command that will create, first, it's going to look at the hardware, and then it's going to, secondly, create a new test file based on the old test template that's running that new piece of hardware through that entire set of 300 tests, right? It's not going to run the tests for them, but it's going to create that entire document exactly how they would create it, saving them hours and hours of manually going in and writing all them tests themselves, or all those tests themselves. And that's just one way to think about custom commands, right? But encourage you folks to explore them yourselves. And I would say that's it for right now as far as the session today. We've covered end to end every step of the SDLC. We've talked about the differences between vibe coding and craft coding, and I think we all understand that you can still be very, very fast and efficient and productive while staying in control, right? The idea of craft coding doesn't mean that we're taking our time and or taking an extended amount of time and slowing things down. We are just being more mindful, more strategic. We're elevating ourselves without undermining our own autonomy. Now, I'll stay online for a few more minutes here. If there's any comments or questions or anything that you want to see, feel free to drop it in the chat here. I appreciate everyone's comments and questions so far. Always makes the sessions more fun when folks are interacting. But again, if you can't think of any right now, or you think of them and it's after the session's ended, we'll be here next week, 3 hours later, 3.5 hours later, 10:30 PT. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and shoot me any messages there. There's specific functionality, or you want to see what my custom behavior is, or have access to this logic, or you want to see some of the data and metrics and research that I've mentioned earlier in this presentation, please do not be a stranger. Do not hesitate to reach out. I love having conversations about this. This is my favorite part of the job. So we'll give it about 30 seconds more here. If folks have any more questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. If not, we'll see you guys next week. Bruno, thanks for joining. I appreciate the kind words. Absolutely, I encourage you to test out the software for yourself. It's always easier to gain an understanding, I think, when you get your hands on it and you can actually work with it. But that's me. And as far as Brazil, yeah, we'll be in cahoots. But I encourage you to reach out if you really are looking to get access to Tabnine. We can probably make something happen. And if there are no further questions, we'll give it about 30 more minutes, or not minutes, 30 more seconds here. You guys have already given me enough time today. And then we'll end things up. Well, I think that takes it. No further questions. We're going to wrap it here. Again, thank you for staying on this entire time. I always enjoy these sessions, and we'll look forward to the session next week. It'll be covering a similar song and dance, right? Talking about, again, those differences between vibe and craft coding next week as well. So if you have someone who missed this session and you want to send it over to them, feel free to direct them here next week. And if there's no other questions, we'll see you folks again soon. Cheers.